Tonight we're studying Exodus chapter 15, Uz Yashir Moshe. When this is read in the synagogue, the font is the same, the chant is different. When I say font, I mean the trup marks, the cantillations, the singing advisements, the little notes that are attached to, not in the Torah, but in the rendering of Torah. And it is sung with a different tune to emphasize that it was a song. There are 3 songs of Moses listed in Bible. This is the first. The reference in Revelation 15. Then they sang the song of Moses, the servant of God, and the song of the Lamb, saying, "Great and wonderful are your deeds, O Lord." So it's pretty remarkable. This idea of Moses' song is, I find it really, I want to say encouraging. I want to say it's enlivening. I want to say it is helpful to me. When I was 20 and a brand new believer, everybody had a guitar. It was the 60s. Everybody had guitars. If you were a cool guy or a dork, it didn't matter. Everybody had a guitar. And garage bands were everywhere. And everybody wanted to be the next Fab Four. When I was 16, or just turning 16, I asked my parents, they said, "What do you want for your birthday?" And I said, "A new car." That didn't go down well. So they said, "What else do you want?" And I said, "Well, I'd like a guitar." Because all the guys who were cool played guitars and I wasn't cool. So I thought if I learned to play, or if I just even had a guitar, I would be cool. Get all the girls and eventually drive the car that eventually someone would buy me. No one did, by the way. And so they gave me a guitar. And the guitar had, this was the 60s, so they gave me a guitar with 6 different color strings. A red string and a yellow string. Well, 6-string guitar is always normative. And of course they're different weights, they're different gauges. But this was different colors too, which was psychedelic and kind of fun. And I taught myself how to play, taking the notes off the piano. This is long before YouTube and Google, so I really did have to teach myself. I knew music theory, but I didn't know guitar, didn't know where to start. And they were tuned properly, so I found the notes, and I taught myself the song Sounds of Silence. That was the first song I learned, and taught myself how to structurally chord that thing. And so every time I hear Sounds of Silence, I remember my 6-string guitar, my colored guitar, and my non-coolness. So when I say the Song of Moses, I want you to think of an 80-year-old fella writing a song, and his sister, who's older yet, old enough to have tended to him in his youth, so maybe she's 90, singing along. Now, most times when we think of 80 and 90-year-olds singing together, we think, well, they're in a home somewhere. But these two are not in a home. They are at home with the Jewish people, in front of the Jewish people, 3 million strong, walking through what we said last week, maybe 1, maybe 12 lanes of Jews running, sometimes walking, but mostly, I'm guessing, running away from Pharaoh's army. And they're singing. When Patty and I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro 2 years ago, and we looked over at Mount Kenya in Kenya, it was right there on the border. It's beautiful. It's a tremendous place. It's a 19,000-foot climb, and you run out of oxygen. On the last day, we left at midnight and climbed up till 6 a.m. We had our lights like a miner's light on top of his head. Mind you, it was a full moon anyway. I didn't even need the light. It was so bright up there on the mountain. And we were already at about 17 or 18,000 foot. I don't remember where we started that day. That day I did, but today I don't. And the fellows who were leading us were Tanzanians, singing in Swahili. They loved the Lord. They were believers. And they were singing gospel songs, some of which I knew in English, not in Swahili. And so I remember right early on in that last climb that they started singing, and they were beautiful. Their teeth were white in the midst of pitch black. They were only teeth, and they were smiling and they were happy and singing up the Lord. But it was It was gorgeous singing, and I joined in. And immediately, Thomas, who was the leader, turned to me and said, "Don't sing." Because he knew, not that I couldn't sing at that moment, but that I needed every bit of breath I could as I was going to get up the hill. He was right. In fact, as we ascended at 6, we turned around. There was the sun rising. It was stunning. We were at what I called the bronze level, and then we climbed another 40 minutes and we were at silver level, and then we hit the very, very top. Mind you, it's just around the top, almost like a volcano. Glaciers all around, each one the size of Westfield and then some. Massive, gorgeous. I've got photos, of course, on Flickr. But as we hit at 7:40, what I called the gold medal landing, he handed me a Red Bull, like you used to drink. Yeah. Or those V's. You used to drink V's. He handed it to me. I said, "Oh, no, I don't drink this stuff." He said, "You will drink this." And I drank it because without that, I wouldn't have made it down. You don't realize how much you don't have until you get up. Now, I didn't realize, but he well realized. So I say all that to say that verse 1, Moses and the sons of Israel sang this song to the Lord. The 80-year-old, out of breath, has just had a year-long battle with Pharaoh, has just had a very tough night listening to the screams of Egypt, has now been led out to the wilderness, a very specific spot, and then the cloud got up and moved, walked through the sea of reeds, and I think at 80, I might say, that's like 3 sets of tennis. I think I'm done. Maybe it's like 12 sets of tennis. I think I'm done. Can I have a break, please? But no, he leads the singing. And Thomas doesn't turn to him and say, "Be quiet." Doesn't hand him a Red Bull. Right there, he leads the singing. And he says, Shir el Adonai, I will sing to the Lord. Ki ga'o ga'a, because he is exalted, exalted. He is seriously exalted. He is the most exalted God. In the Bible, when it repeats, it's intentionally amplifying. So there he is. He is exalted and then some. If there are gods who are exalted, he wins hands down. That's what he's saying. The horse and its rider he's hurled into the sea. Can you imagine? Have you ever escaped? I remember driving in Washington, D.C. It was a snowy day. We had driven, there was a team of musicians with me, and we had gone to sing somewhere over east of D.C. Snowy day, cold, winter, not like winter in Sydney, where you wear a jacket. I mean cold, snowy, terrible. And I was driving our Juice for Jesus van, think a Toyota Tarago. And attached to it was our musical equipment because there were so many in the band and we needed extra room. And I was driving on the Beltway, that's the major loop around Washington, D.C., and hit a patch of black ice. And immediately we did not a 360, but a 540. I ended facing back the wrong way on an interstate in the United States on a Sunday afternoon, which was extremely busy, but for about 20 seconds, completely empty of anyone but us. Behind me, I remember Keena, who turned 40 yesterday, waking up because several had fallen asleep in the van and scream, and a couple people, their prayer life was really good. Hallelujah! There was a couple of those because they had just woken up to or seen the spinning, and we knew we were dead meat. And then facing the wrong way on an interstate, think M4, going the wrong way. There's going to be... But for about 20 seconds, there was nobody, and I could just turn it around and get started and get up to 100K within a few seconds. How remarkable is that? That feeling that I had and that we all had on that day was something similar, I think, to the horse and its rider he's hurled into the sea. I think they had it much more, but that's the closest I've ever had to experiencing the heartbeat that's going fast, 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 and you turn and you see deliverance. Because that's what it was. We were delivered after 400 years of slavery. I mean, that's powerful. And narrowly escaped. Remember last week, the 4 reactions to the Red Sea. Oh no, what's going to happen? What are we going to do? Let's chuck it in. Let's give ourselves up. Let's fight. Let's pray. And all of them, God said, you stand by and watch. And sure enough, he hurled them into the sea. God himself delivered the Jewish people. God himself saved us from Pharaoh. And, you know, if I were an 80-year-old guy, having just gone through all that, I might say, excuse me, where's my hammock or my lazy boy? I'd like to put my feet up. Could I get to, hello, could a water, a cup of coffee, a little something? Something. But what did he do? He said, let's have a praise service to the Almighty. Ashir el Adonai, I will sing to the Lord. And then this famous phrase, the Lord is my strength and my song, Aziva Zimra Adonai, this song that is picked up by Isaiah and David in the Psalms, is the Lord is my strength and my song, and he's become my salvation. A beautiful phrase of dramatic declaration. Strength, song, salvation. This is my God, I'll praise him. My father's God, I'll extol him. Moses' father's God. Who was Moses' father? Amram, who married his aunt, Yocheved. But he's declaring, this isn't just about me, this is my ancestors' God. This is the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That's what he's saying by saying my father's God. He's not saying Amram had a God and he's different than all the other Jewish people. He's saying, history has declared him God, and I will carry on the extolling of God. This word extol, we see in Isaiah, both at the beginning and at the end of Isaiah, Ram V'Nisa, exalted. I saw the Lord, Ram V'Nisa. And a lot of people memorize Bible by singing. When Moses led the singing, they recorded it, and we to this day sing it differently, the Oz Yashir, so that we recall it. Verse 3, the Lord's a warrior, the Lord is his name. Ish Milchama, a man of war. Does that bother you? A non-pacifist. Because shouldn't God, if there were a God, shouldn't he be like me and I'm peaceful? No, he's not like you. He's like himself, and then that'll do, thanks. And in his nature, he is a judging God and a loving God. He is a merciful God and a righteous God. So he's both, and he's not neither, and he's not one or, he's both and he can figure out how to do that, even though we can't. He's a warrior. He's an Ish Milchama, a man of war, and Yahweh Shemo. This Yahweh is his name. Pharaoh's chariots and his army he's cast into the sea, and the choicest of his officers are drowned in the Red Sea. The deep covers them. They went down into the depths like a stone, meaning rapidly, meaning irretrievably. And they got swallowed up in the very place where the Jewish people had just paraded in dry land. Your right hand, O Lord, is majestic in power. Your right hand, O Lord, shatters the enemy. So he didn't even use both hands, because the right hand is the hand of mercy and the left hand is the hand of judgment. When he uses his right hand to do what looks like justice, it's a merciful act towards someone. So we might say his left hand judged the enemies. But when we think his right hand did it, we're saying his mercy judged them because he was merciful to us. So often I see it that way. Right hand, left hand is often that way. Yeshua is on the right hand. You'll sit at my right hand until I make your enemy your footstool. So mercy triumphs over judgment. Your right hand you always put your right shoe on first, according to Jewish sources. Verse 7, in the greatness of your excellence you overthrow those who rise up against you. Look, the battle is not between Jews and Egyptians. The battle is between God and those who oppose God. And it's the battle against not his rules, not against his congregations, but against his authority. He is great. He is worthy of all praise. He is excellent. The greatness, the rove of your excellence, Gaon, you overthrow those who rise up against you. So he sends forth his anger and it consumes them as chaff. You go up against God, you're going to be nothing. You're just a piece of dust. And God will remind you who you're not. At the blast of your nostrils, and this idea of nostril flaring, you've seen it, haven't you? When people get really angry. That's actually the Hebrew word for anger. Yeah, your nostrils getting flared. The waters were piled up. Flowing waters stood up like a heap. Deeps were congealed in the heart of the sea. The enemy said, I'm going to pursue. I'm going to overtake. I'll divide the spoil. My desire shall be gratified against them. I'll draw out my sword. My hand will destroy them. You blew with your wind. The sea covered them. They sank like lead. So first they sank like rocks and now or stones. Now they're sinking like lead in the waters that were Adir, mighty. Who is like you among the gods, O Lord? Mi chamocha boelim Adonai, mi kamocha nedar bakodesh. Nora tehilot osefela. This stock standard prayer is sung often in modern days in Messianic circles, but it is right out of the Shemona Esrei. I mean, you are saying this daily. You'll often hear people use the word mi chamocha and mi kamocha saying it the same, but it's different. Who is like you among the gods? Who's like you? For some reason, the cha has no dagesh the first time, and the ka has a dagesh the second time. Don't ask me why. Nora tehilot ose fele. Where have you heard the word fele before? Doing wonders. So fele is the word that's used in Judges when he says, when there's a bit of a battle, in Genesis, when Jacob wrestles with the angel and he says, what's your name? He says, my name is Fele, wonderful. In Isaiah, the child would be born to us, son will be given to us, and his name will be called Fele, wonderful. The name of God is the name of the Messiah, is the name of the Son, is the one who wrestled. And here he is, awesome in praises, working wonders, or working himself as wonderful. He does what he does. He does his name. Where he is, he accomplishes his activities. Some people want to know who I am or who you are. What's your name and what does that mean? What they really want to know is, okay, your name, I get your name, like we know that guy's name who came in the shop just a minute ago. His name is Mark. He didn't introduce himself, but his lady friend did. But when you want to know who God is, you don't really want to know his name, though you do. You want to know what he will do. Your name says what you'll do. So if his name is wonderful, he will do wonders. He will osefele. And I love that about the name of God. When I think his name is El Shaddai, what's he going to do? He's going to do mighty things. And if Shaddai comes from Shaddad, meaning breast, then he's going to provide for me. And that's often the case. El Shaddai is the name used more often in Job than any other for the name of God. And he's the providing God, sustaining us, fruit-bearing God, that kind of thing. So when I think that he is Adonai Rapha, he's the God who heals. So what does that mean to me? That means when I'm ill or when I'm crook or when I'm broken, like we saw in last night's drama, when I see brokenness, then God will heal my brokenness. So what God's name is tells me what God will accomplish. And that's much more significant than anything. It's not a battle for, is his name Jehovah? Or is his name Yahweh? Or is his name Elohim? That's irrelevant. If you fight about the name of God, the point is, what is God going to do and what does he expect of you relationally? I'm not saying God's name is irrelevant. What I'm saying is he doesn't want us to squabble about names so much as enter into what he wants to do. Verse 12, you stretched out your right hand, the earth swallowed them. So now the earth swallows them. They're like a rock, they're like lead, and now they're just gone all the way in. We're going to see that same idea with fellow later on in our conversation, a Jewish guy. Verse 13, in your chesed you have led the people whom you have redeemed. In your strength you have guided them to your holy habitation. Most of the time when you read habitation in the scripture, you think of home, but we haven't made it home. But what is the holy habitation that we're singing about, that Moses is singing about? Well, no, because we have not been guided there. We're not there yet to Haaretz, to the presence of God, to where God is. That is our habitation. There's a lot of noise right now in the world because of 3 teenagers being killed, a Palestinian teenager being killed, gunfire going, 40,000 troops called up along the Gaza border. There is a major, 121 missiles fired the day before yesterday, and I don't know about today. All I know is that there's a lot of nervousness in the land, and there's a lot of economic nervousness globally, not related to Israel, but related to the tenuous nature of economic congruity. There's a lot of economic worry. Although the ASX is high right now, the New York Stock Exchange is higher than it's ever been in history, over 16,000. How is that when there's so much nervousness in the world, so much unemployment in the world, so much economic distress? Because the guys who are the bankers and the guys who are running the stock exchange aren't experiencing those problems. The you and the I, those, we're having the problems. And so among people, there's nervousness. Among the executives, there may not be. But I was just talking to a Jewish believer earlier today who had just come back from the U.S. and was telling me that there is so much worry about economic collapse in the United States that people are saying, let's get our papers in order and get ready to go to the land, and on, move to Israel. That's the only safe place. And there is increased, probably more French migration this year than ever before to the Holy Land because of increased anti-Semitism. Massive anti-Semitism. I think I told you about it in January on the Erev Holocaust Day, the night. Here it was Australia Day, 26 January. But 27 January is International Day of Remembrance of the Holocaust. And it was that day in France, in the streets of Paris, that 15,000 people were marching against Jews. 15,000 is no little march. Juif out, get the Jews out of France. So it's not a surprise that Parisian Jews are saying, yipes, what's going to happen? Let's get out of here. So is there a safe haven for people? Is there a place? Riots happen all over the world. There are problems in Brazil. I don't know about the Netherlands, but because of the World Cup over the last 2 days, Brazil, some of our teams there out evangelizing for the last 3 weeks did not go out yesterday because of two things: rain, which was a factor preventing some things, but secondly, rioting Brazilians on the streets having lost or semifinal of the World Cup. So it's dangerous to be a Jew out on the streets when rioting crowds are looking for a scapegoat. We're not stupid. We know that history, that we could be taken down in a heartbeat. The Holocaust happened within some people's still alive's lifetime. So we've got to be careful, we've got to be wise. So the question is Israel a safe habitation? Well, not today. Here's the answer. It's in verse number 13. You've guided them to your holy habitation. The habitation is not the land. The habitation is not Sydney or outside Chicago, this place called Zion, Illinois, founded to be a Christian holy land, if you will. But the place is in the hands of the Almighty. That's the holy habitation to which Moses was calling us. No matter where we wandered in the wilderness for the next 4 decades, no matter where we landed and lived for the next few hundred years, and from which we were exiled in 722 BCE, and then again 586 BCE, and then we were back in the land decades later, and then kicked out again in 70 in the Common Era until 1948. No matter where we go, friends, the only holy habitation is the presence of God. Jerusalem is not the holy habitation of God. The presence of God is the holy habitation of God. Otherwise, he's singing about something that's a useless song. Verse 14, the peoples have heard, they tremble. Anguish has gripped the inhabitants of Philistia. How they knew that, I don't know. The chiefs of Edom were dismayed. The leaders of Moab, trembling, grips them. All the inhabitants of Canaan have melted away. This is certainly true of what will happen when Joshua goes in and takes the people through in just 4 decades on. And so much so that Rahab the harlot says, I'm going with those Jew boys instead of with the Canaanite boys around whom I'm living. So I'm not sure how Moses is prophesying these things in 14 and 15. Terror and dread fall upon them. That's certainly true. And it's said again and again in the book of Joshua and the book of Judges that is reason why the people, we're going to see it with Balaam and Balak in Numbers. Leave those people alone. I'm not going to curse them. They got God on their team. This is like the Maroons. Don't mess. By the greatness of your arm, they are motionless as stone, another image of rock. Until your people pass over, O Lord, until the people pass over whom you have purchased. So there's another buying thing. Redemption happened earlier. That was a different verb. This is purchase. You'll bring them and plant them in the mountain of your inheritance, the place, O Lord, which you've made for your dwelling, the sanctuary, O Lord, which your hands have established. So there's the prophecy of what's ahead as we're going to go into the land in due course, and people are going to be afraid, and they're going to be scared. And the Lord, verse 18, Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed, the Lord will reign into the eternal realm forever and ever. That's the song of Moses. For the horses of Pharaoh with his chariots and horsemen went into the sea, and the Lord brought back the waters of the sea on them, but the sons of Israel walked on dry land through the midst of the sea. That's the narrator. So that's not the song of Moses. You with me? That's the words of Moses, or the narrator, but not the song. The song officially ended with Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed. Then Miriam, verse 20, the prophetess, Aaron's sister, isn't she Moses' sister too? But she looked more like Aaron, maybe, or she was older, and she and Aaron had formed this club of taking care of little Egyptian moish. You know, we're not sure why it's that way. Took the timbrel, what's that, in her hand? A tambourine.
Tambourine.
Yeah, it's a doumbek, but it's probably more a tambourine. And all the women went out after her with timbrels and with dancing. Woo-hoo! And she answered them, and in verse 21 sang, Shiru Adonai, and she said it again, Ki ga'o ga'a, sisvarachvo ramavayam. Same words, sing to the Lord, for he is exalted way above everybody. The horse and his rider he's hurled into the sea. This is Miriam's chorus that she keeps singing. It's maybe antiphonal. Maybe Moish is leading everybody singing this song, and she's singing in reply. He sings a song, and she sings the chorus. Verse, chorus. So kind of an antiphonal song. We see it A, then B, but maybe it was A, B, C, B, D, B, E, B. Maybe it was like that. So Moses led Israel from the Red Sea, and they went out into the wilderness of Shur, and they went 3 days in the wilderness and didn't find any water. They came to Marah. They couldn't drink the water of Marah. Why? Because what does Marah mean? And it says, for they were bitter. Therefore it was named Marah. There you go. So the people, I wonder what it was called before then. You know, Lake Tapawingo or something. So the people grumbled at Moses, saying, what are we supposed to drink? He cried out to the Lord. The Lord showed him a tree. He threw it into the waters, and the waters became matok, sweet. There he made for them a statute, a chok, and a mishpat, and there he, that's God, nasa, he tested them. And this happened before. I mean, this is probably an old trick that's done where you take a particular tree to sweeten water. It might be, I mean, we might think eucalyptus, we might think ginger, we might think any number of things that are used as roots, as sarsaparilla, by the which you make root beer. I mean, there are all kinds of trees or roots of trees by the which waters which are not so pleasant are turned pleasant. Think of beer that takes ordinary water and you add some hops and malt and whatever else, and it becomes this sweet tasting thing. No, he threw the tree or root into the waters. And that's it's used several times in Bible. It's certainly used here. And throwing things into the water to make water into something else, that's often done. Moses had put his staff out and the water became a wall. He turned the water into blood. Waters can change into different things at the sign of God, at the strength of God, at the work of God. Verse 26, he said, if you'll give earnest heed to the voice of the Lord your God and do what's right in his sight and give ear to his commandments and keep all his statutes, I will put none of the diseases on you which I've put on the Egyptians. For I, the Lord, am your Rapha, Adonai Rofecha. They came to Elim, where there were 12 springs of water and 70 date palms, and they camped there beside the waters. I don't think 3 million people are going to be satisfied with 70 date palms. But I think that's a pretty good deal, though. 12 springs of water. A spring of water, is not a little pond. It's a spring. It keeps coming. It's providing for everybody. So in the one case, after Moses cries out to the Lord, he gets the idea to toss the sweetener. So he probably camped all 12 tribes, each one by a spring of water, and 70 is just a great biblical number that's used over and over again. But look, there were 70 date palms. I mean, that's really what there were. Somebody counted 70. And everybody got 5, and 2 got shorted the 6th. The tribes, I guess they had plenty. Mind you, they didn't need food. We're going to see the provision of manna, but it no doubt began early We're going to see it pick up when he describes it soon, not in this chapter. But the provision of manna would have had to come straight away because people had to eat. But the idea of palms, dates, really, and water, and what do you need? You need the provision, protection, shade. You need a wadi, you need some good water source. You can only live 3 days without water in the desert. So it had to be pretty quick. I like that God provided for them both through the cleverness of God showing him a tree to throw into the water to change bitter to sweet, and also the providing of finding the one place where there were 12 springs. God provides for us in a number of ways. He doesn't always provide in one way, and we have to look for his provision in a number of ways. What we don't want to be is the people of verse 24 who grumbled and who said to Moses, hey, what are we supposed to do out here? Like, it's your problem. It's not ours. Mind you, at the end of the last chapter, we saw that the people believed in God and believed in Moses. So they were putting their trust in him, and now he's letting them down straight away. Or is he? Well, they're pretty demanding. And I don't know that it's all the people, but it's enough of the people that it's called the people. And I don't know how you see what God will do in judgment or in relationship with us as his people, but I know that we want to keep growing as a threshold of people who respond to the love of God. We want to keep being the people who love the Lord, not the people who grumble against the Lord. And maybe he'll look down on us and he'll say, yeah, the people are loving me, instead of the people are grumbling. Maybe we'll be the representatives. Wouldn't that be holy? I will put none of these diseases on you which I put on the Egyptians. What diseases did he put on the Egyptians? Boils. Yeah, it wasn't exactly a disease, but it was certainly infecting the land. All those things, it could be translated, this machala, could be translated sickness. Chala, not like your loaf of bread, means to become weak or afflicted. To become sick, ill, weak, diseased, faint, grievous, incurable. All these are translations used throughout the record of Scripture. Pretend to be ill, putting to grief, serious, sick, sickly, sorry, strained, weak, weakened, and wounded. So all of those adjectives are used, he says, that I won't put any of that on you. How's that going to happen? If we trust him. That is always the case. It is never about how righteous we are in the sense of activity. He says, if you will give earnest heed. What do you reckon that is? Im shamoa tishma. Do you hear it? Shamoa tishma. So what is that?
Hearing.
It's a repetition of the word to hear. If you will give earnest heed, if you will listeningly listen, l'kol Adonai, to the voice of God. It doesn't say, if you will write down and study all the commandments, but if you will listen. And how do you listen to someone with whom you don't have a relationship? It begs the relationship. The word of listening to God begs that we're right there close enough to hear. He didn't have an amplifier. He didn't have an MP3 player. It means you're there next door. You're right there in his presence. The holy habitation. To do what's right, to give ear. I like that again. Give your azan to his commandments and keep, that's shamar, that's guard, all his statutes, all his chuk. I'll put none of these. I'm the Lord your healer. Adonai Rophe. This idea of healing from the very beginning is not only about getting rid of boils, but it's about having a relationship with God. And healing from the very beginning always is about getting rid of the stuff that separates you from God and brings you back into relationship with him. That is Exodus chapter 15. Uz Yashir Moshe, Song of Moses.